Welcome, everyone. You are now listening to It's Time We Talk, a podcast, a part of Real Rap Entertainment. My name is Christian Maldonado, the editor-in-chief of Real Rap Entertainment. Welcome to my brand new podcast. Feel free to check out any and all of the work by myself and my talented colleagues at Real, R-E-E-L, Rap, W-R-A-P, entertainment.com, or click the link in the description box below to check out all of the work, like I said, by myself and my colleagues on sports, music, movies, TV shows, video games, all that kind of stuff. Without further ado, I'd like us to get into episode 2, which will be discussing Duke University. Now, at the time of recording, we are less than 24 hours out from the incredible ending to Duke versus Connecticut in the Elite Eight. In what was an all-time classic game, the Duke Blue Devils came up short of making it back-to-back trips to the Final Four. A game like the one that we saw yesterday between Duke and UConn comes once in a blue moon. And while for some it was thrilling, others it was heartbreaking, it is indicative, in my opinion, of a larger issue going on at Duke University. Now that the dust is settled after that historic buzzer-beating shot from Braylon Mullins, I just want to spend some time not only breaking down how Duke allowed UConn to get back into that game and how they allowed them to win, but if last night's game and recent history have taught us anything, that maybe the overall strategy at Duke is something that needs to change sooner rather than later. Going into this year, Duke was ranked number 6 in the nation according to the Associated Press rankings. UConn was above them. I believe Purdue were the number 1 team, but Duke was definitely expected to be a contender this year. And when you look at them, there was a lot of buzz around them. A lot of the focus was on former national champion Carlos Boozer and his sons Caden and Cameron, who had committed to play for Duke out of high school. It was a really interesting and a really emotional and good moment to see Carlos Boozer, who had won a national title in 2001 with Duke, to have his sons go to the same school where he had won a national title. It seemed like it was a very big deal, and like I said, there was a lot of buzz. Cameron Boozer was the number 3 ranked prospect in the class of 2025. And a lot of people had been talking about his NBA career before he even put on a uniform for Duke. And now, Caden and Cameron were not the only exciting freshmen on the team. You had California native Nicholas Kamenya and international prospect Dame Sarr, both inside the top 100 for Recruiting Services Consensus Index rankings. They had 4 top 100 freshmen. They had 5 freshmen overall on their team this year. And Duke has always been a program that has given opportunities to some of the most exciting and talented freshmen that we have seen in the sport. You know, you're talking about Christian Laettner, Zion Williamson, Cooper Flagg last year. Great athletes, guys who made lasting impacts on the school and on the sport of college basketball. Now, while this strategy of putting exciting young players at the forefront and giving them the opportunity to excite on a national stage, it has been seen in the past as admirable to some, but it is clear in the past couple of years that college basketball is moving in a different direction. When we look at the teams that make up this year's Final Four, there is something very particular in common amongst the 4 teams. Now that is, their starting lineups are built from a healthy mixture of young and exciting talent, don't get me wrong, but also experienced, sort of been there before upperclassmen and transfers. We take a look at the University of Connecticut yesterday. Braylon Mullins, freshman from Indiana, hitting the game-winning shot. Now, while he was the one that ultimately decided the game for UConn, their starting lineup yesterday was built around Solo Ball, who was on the 2024 national title-winning team, Caravan, who was on the 2023 and 2024 national title teams, and you have 2 guys in Silas Demery Jr. and Terrace Reed Jr., who were transfers from other big programs in Georgia and Michigan, respectively. Now, talking about NIL, it has really made Duke's strategy of relying almost solely on exciting and inexperienced talent almost obsolete. I take a look at Rick Pitino. Last year, he appeared on Barstool's Pardon My Take podcast and said that he would no longer be recruiting players out of high school for his program at St. John's, solely looking at the transfer portal. When he was asked on the podcast if he would take a 5-star high school player at St. John's, he said, and I quote, "I probably wouldn't take them because I don't think you can win big with high school kids." Now, if that were coming from anybody else, you'd sort of have something to say about it. But the fact that it's coming from Rick Pitino, who is one of the most successful and one of the most iconic head coaches in the sport, it makes you think. It makes you wonder, is he right? Duke had the most freshmen in their starting lineup amongst the teams in the Elite Eight this year. And even if you only look at the last play of the game, if we don't take the entire game, we take that last play, the inbounds, the ball ends up in the hands of Caden Boozer, and instead of literally just holding on to the ball, just sitting on it, like he tries to pass the ball up the court, instead of just holding on to the ball. When you look at it, like I said, Caden Boozer throws the ball away, Braylon Mullins gets it, passes it to Caravan back to Mullins hits the shot. You have to think that if the ball was in the hands of a junior or senior transfer, somebody who had either been at the school for a while or somebody who had been in that situation before, you have to think if the game would have ended the way it did. Or even if the game would have gotten to the situation that it was in. I'm not saying that having 3 freshmen in your starting lineup is the reason why Duke lost is the reason why UConn was back into the game. But you look at it and you think maybe more experienced players would be able to take advantage of the fact that UConn at one point shot 1 for 18 from 3. At the end, UConn ended up shooting 5 for 23? When a team shoots 5 for 23 from 3, you should never lose that game. You should never lose that game. And I think John Shire and I think Duke, the program, knows that. Duke right now are currently on the longest run in school history without a national title since they won their first title in 1991. It's been 11 years since Jahlil Okafor and the Duke Blue Devils won the national title, and the last time that they conquered March Madness. Now, it's clear that while guys like the Boozer brothers, Cooper Flagg, Zion Williamson are unbelievable college basketball talents, it has not resulted in a national title in the last decade, like I just mentioned. This is a program that is considered to be one of the more prestigious blue blood schools, and lofty expectations every single year. You think about Duke, and even the casual who only watches March Madness, only watches a couple games in March Madness, when they're filling out their bracket, they usually have Duke to go a long way. And while they did make the Elite Eight this year, they made the Final Four last year, there's probably a good chunk of people who in this past 10 years have picked Duke to win the national title, and they've come up short. Other schools, if they go 10, 11 years without a national title, it's not the biggest thing in the world. A lot of teams struggle to win a game or two in March Madness. Some schools struggle to win March Madness, or to get into March Madness in general. But when you're Duke University, you have the legacy of Coach K, Christian Laettner, Grant Hill, Carlos Boozer, Zion Williamson, Cooper Flagg, Jahlil Okafor, all these different players. I mean, I'm omitting a bunch, I'm sure, but I'm just trying to make a point here. While you have these guys, it's clear that NIL has made it so that there is a much more, I don't want to say a more level playing field, but schools are able to buy some of the premier talent in college basketball. And while Duke still has the pulling power of being Duke and being a blue blood and being one of the most successful programs in the history of college basketball, NIL is just making it harder for teams to be successful. You know, Duke are able to get even more of the exciting freshmen that are in the recruiting classes. You know, like we said, three out of the top 20 in the class of 2025 attend Duke University. And that's a wild statistic. You don't usually see that. Significant because it shows that college basketball is moving in a different direction. Now, looking at it, they were ranked as the number one team in college basketball for the final month of the season. Obviously, they had played some great basketball towards the in conference play towards the end of the regular season, and they won the ACC championship. So they were successful. They were able to outlast some very good teams in the ACC and outlast a Virginia team that had a lot of momentum in the championship, and they were able to take care of business. And they were put into a gauntlet of a region going into the NCAA tournament with Michigan State, UConn, St. John's, Kansas. And out of those teams, they did beat St. John's. St. John's put up a great fight. Rick Pitino and his boys, while they did have more experience than Duke, it was clear that Duke had more talent. And, Duke had more size. But when you come up against a UConn team, you come up against a coach like Dan Hurley in the Elite Eight. Jon Scheyer is a great head coach, and I think the appointment of him as the heir to Mike Krzyzewski is not a bad thing. In hindsight, you see they haven't won a national title with him yet. It's not really indicative. I think Jon Scheyer is a good head coach, and he consistently has Duke competing, but the matchup, the coaching matchup was lopsided. You have a guy like Dan Hurley who, down 15 at half, I don't know what Dan Hurley said to his players at halftime. I don't know what the huddles were like. I can imagine what they were like, but there's a reason why John Rothstein calls him the Carpenter. But Dan Hurley brought UConn back. You know what I mean? Dan Hurley is now in his third Final Four in 4 years. He has that championship DNA. He won back-to-back national titles in 2023 and 2024. Jon Scheyer and his coaching staff definitely need to take some responsibility for that loss as well. There was that absolutely astonishing stat. I don't know if a lot of other people, I assume it's made the rounds on Twitter and social media, that number one seeds in the NCAA tournament, when leading by 15 points or more at the half, were 134-0. 134-0. Now, watching that game, I saw that and I thought, oh my goodness gracious. 134-0. That is crazy. And the fact that Jon Scheyer and his team are now responsible for that statistic being 134-1. This will be a stain on the program, probably for a while. People who don't like Duke have the memory of an elephant, and they're able to pinpoint the lowest moments in the school's, the same as it is for, a lot of rivals, right? I bet you Duke fans are the same way with UNC or other national title rivals. It is definitely clear that the recruiting staff need to have a conversation about their policy in the offseason. I don't think this is something that you can gradually, I think this is something that needs to be discussed today. Like, as I'm speaking, it is currently 10 o'clock on a Monday morning. I think before you go on vacation, before you go back, you need, Jon Scheyer, your recruiting staff, the AD, everybody, you need to have a conversation about your recruiting process. Because, like I said, it has worked wonders for you in the past. But you need to have more experience in this team. And the thing that's scary is that if Duke finds a way to sort of mix exciting young players and experienced transfers or upperclassmen, this could be a team that'll win the national title next year. I feel like a lot of people said that after their loss in the Final Four last year. So it's interesting. I'll definitely be paying attention to Duke's recruiting class and how the team looks going into next year. Obviously, I think guys like Cam Boozer will be gone. I'm not sure about Caden Boozer. I wouldn't be surprised if he ended up trying his luck in the NBA. Isaiah Evans, probably going to be gone. Caleb Foster, who is a guy who has experienced, and earlier on in the season, he did have quite an impact on this team, but of course he did have foot surgery, and the fact that he was able to play yesterday was astonishing. The fact he was able to play in the last two games for Duke was incredible. I think he will probably be gone. Dame Sarr might stay. Nicholas Kamenya probably is going to leave. It'll be interesting to see how much turnover there is at Duke. I think your best players are going to go, while you have guys who are freshmen who, like I said, 3 freshmen in the starting 5 yesterday. You have seniors who are going to go. Seniors who don't play that much, who are not going to be on the team next year. In guys like, Jack Scott, Cameron Sheffield, Brock Davis, guys like that. So there's going to be a lot of turnover with this Duke team, and it's interesting to see how John Shire and his staff will fill in the gaps. I'm interested to, like I said, I'm very interested to see that, and I think that if the recruiting process does change, there is no doubt in my mind that Duke could contend for a national title in 2027, that they could make it even past the Elite Eight. It's just, something's got to change. And I'm not a Duke fan, and I'm not pleading with John Shire. I'm not pleading with anybody to make this change. I'm just saying, like, as somebody looking at this process, who's done my research into yesterday's game, watched the entire game, and has watched a lot of Duke basketball this year, it's going to be a very long off season for Duke. That loss is definitely going to sting. It's going to hurt the fan base. It's going to hurt the players. It's going to hurt the staff. But got to have a goldfish brain. Got to have a goldfish brain, and you got to start looking at next year, because you can't allow that to happen again. That cannot happen again if you're Duke. I'm interested to hear your thoughts and opinions as well. Let me know if you think I'm speaking sense or nonsense. Thank you so much for listening. Like I said, this has been It's Time We Talk, Episode 2, centered around Duke University and its basketball program. I'll say it again, as I said at the beginning, please feel free to check out Real Rap Entertainment on YouTube, realrapentertainment.com, Real Rap Entertainment on Instagram. Like I said, I'm very interested to hear your guys' thoughts and opinions, so please, if you have some, leave them in the comments. I'd love to read through some of your thoughts. Thank you again. My name is Christian Maldonado, the editor-in-chief at Real Rap Entertainment, and I have had the absolute pleasure of having this discussion with you guys. Thank you so much, and I will see you on episode 3.